What's up, guys? It's time for another dose of Insider Weekly. The video game industry is in flux with massive layoffs. Let's get to the bottom of the headlines. PlayStation announced that it is laying off around 900 employees, or about 8% of its workforce. The game director for Battlefield, Marcus Lehto, has left EA. Following his departure, EA has laid off about 5% of its own workforce and closing down Ridgeline Studio. Additionally, following my previous report of a Mandalorian video game being done by Respawn, EA has now canceled that game. Supermassive Games is set to lay off 30% of its staff. And the Nintendo Switch 2 is reportedly on the way, expected to release about a year from now in March of 2025. I'm your host with the most A to the P, Albert Perkins. Let's get behind these headlines and get you on the inside. According to a new blog post from Sony Interactive, PlayStation has announced plans to lay off 900 people globally, which equates to about 8% of the company's workforce. Jim Ryan sent out an email to workers this past Wednesday morning mentioning that PlayStation is focusing on long-term sustainability of the company and streamlining resources to meet customer standards. Ryan added that the layoffs will affect employees across all regions within Sony Interactive Entertainment. So in the UK, PlayStation plans to close the London studio in its entirety. Firesprite will also see reductions, and there will also be reductions in various functions across Sony Interactive Entertainment in the UK as well. Jim Ryan also issued an additional statement regarding PlayStation's decision to lay off 900 employees from its workforce. The statement read, "The PlayStation community means everything to us, so I felt it was important to update you on a difficult day at our company. We have made the extremely hard decision to announce our plan to commence a reduction of our overall headcount globally by about 8%, or about 900 people, subject to local law and consultation processes. Employees across the globe, including our studios, are impacted. These are incredibly talented people who have been a part of our success, and we are very grateful for their contributions. However, the industry has changed immensely, and we need to future ready ourselves to set the business up for what lies ahead. We need to deliver on expectations from developers and gamers and continue to propel future technology in gaming, so we took a step back to ensure we are set up to continue bringing the best gaming experiences to the community." Head of PlayStation Studios Herman Hertz mentioned other areas affected by the layoffs in another blog post, specifying Insomniac Games, Naughty Dog, as well as PlayStation's technology, creative, and support teams. Marcus Lehto has officially announced his departure from Battlefield and EA. Now this follows the news that broke this past weekend that he had removed his association with Battlefield on social media. He put out a statement on Twitter saying, quote, "Yes, I left EA on my own accord. This was a very tough decision for me to make. I want to thank the Battlefield community for allowing me to list you while I was able. Your feedback will help make Battlefield stronger. I wish the teams at EA all the best moving forward. In the meantime, I will be taking time away from games to see what, if anything, I want to do next." Marcus Lehto had joined EA following the launch of Battlefield 2042, where he built a new development team in Seattle focused on injecting more storytelling within the Battlefield universe. Several months after his official announcement, it was then confirmed that he was to be the creative director of a new studio, Ridgeline Games. And speaking of Ridgeline Games, EA has now closed down that studio as part of their restructuring efforts. More on Ridgeline in just a minute, but it was announced this past Wednesday that EA would be laying off about 5% of its workforce, which equates to about 670 employees, in a bid to restructure the firm and amend its operating model. This news was first seen on GamesIndustry.biz in a memo circulated by EA CEO Andrew Wilson. EA announced this news days after a small wave of layoffs following the closure of 2 additional mobile game studios. Additionally, it was revealed that Electronic Arts plans to move away from the development of licensed IPs that the company does not believe will be successful in the changing industry. This will not impact games that are in production currently though, namely the Black Panther and Iron Man titles. This greater focus allows us to drive creativity, accelerate innovation, and double down on our biggest opportunities, including our owned IP, sports, and massive online communities to deliver the entertainment players want today and tomorrow. In the report from gamesindustry.biz, it was claimed that this restructuring effort will cost EA up to $165 million. This wave of layoffs brings the total number of EA employees laid off in the past year to around 11% of the entire company. A huge part of those layoffs no doubt will be from Ridgeline, as EA has plans to completely shut the studio down. As I mentioned earlier, Ridgeline was the developer responsible for the single-player side of the Battlefield games. Now development will now be handled by Criterion, in an interesting move as that studio has mostly been known for Burnout and the Need for Speed franchises. They have a history of working on Battlefield in the past, but they now will hold full responsibility of the single-player areas. In a statement regarding the layoffs, the president of EA Entertainment and Technology seemingly indicated that the departure of Marcus Lehto has led in some form to the shutdown of the Ridgeline studio. Marcus Lehto recently made a personal decision to leave the project, she said. To ensure our work continues uninterrupted, we immediately appointed leadership at Criterion to oversee our single-player work. As part of this change, we'll be winding down Ridgeline as the standalone studio in Seattle, with some team members joining Ripple Effect. They'll continue to work with teams across DICE, Ripple, and Criterion as they build the next Battlefield experience. As of the numbers known, the gaming industry has seen over 8,000 people let go in the last 2 months of 2024. Last year saw approximately 10,000 people laid off in some form. The Mandalorian video game has also been canceled as part of the massive EA layoffs over at Respawn. We of course were the first to give you the news on this game being Respawn's first-person Star Wars game based on the Mandalorian bounty hunter. This points to what I mentioned earlier, how EA will be moving away from licensed IP for a while, focusing more in favor of Battlefield content. Now this move comes as a major shock, of course, especially for those working on the project, which has had several levels already completed. The game would see the player take control of Mando as he traversed across the galaxy to capture bounties. Sources describe the game as very fast-paced, rewarding players with health regeneration based on successive kills. We have further details on the canceled Mandalorian game from Respawn, straight from Tom Henderson himself, so head on over to insidergaming.com for more details on that game and what could have been. In other layoff news, Supermassive is set to lay off around a staggering 30% of its staff, or around 90 people. In a report from Bloomberg, the studio told about 150 employees that they were at risk of being let go. The studio then confirmed the cuts on social media, stating, "After much deliberation and with deep regret, we are therefore undertaking the reorganization of Supermassive Games. As a result, we are entering into a period of consultation, which we anticipate will result in the loss of some of our colleagues. This is not a decision that's taken lightly, with many efforts made to avoid this outcome. We are all too aware of how unsettling and difficult this process is going to be for all of our employees, and will be working closely with all those involved to ensure this process is conducted as respectfully and compassionately as possible." Supermassive, the studio behind successful interactive story games like The Quarry and Until Dawn, is currently working on a collaboration effort with Behavior Interactive on a new game set in the Dead by Daylight universe called The Casting of Frank Stone. And in some positive news for this week, first reported by The Verge, a new claim has surfaced suggesting that the Nintendo Switch 2 could be headed for a release in 2025. The new report says that the system could launch as early as March, just a year away. Most of us expected that the Switch 2 could launch sometime this year, but this claim suggests that we may have to wait just a bit longer for the console's release. Now, insiders, let's quickly recap everything that was highlighted on this edition of Insider Weekly. PlayStation has announced a reduction in its workforce, with approximately 900 employees, constituting about 8% of its total workforce, facing layoffs. Meanwhile, Marcus Lehto, the game director behind Battlefield, has departed from EA. Subsequently, EA has decided to lay off approximately 5% of its own workforce and shut down the Ridgeline studio. Moreover, EA has canceled the Mandalorian video game previously reported to be in development by Respawn. Supermassive Games is also planning to reduce its staff by 30%. And on a more positive note, Rumors suggest that the Nintendo Switch 2 is in the pipeline with anticipated release around March of 2025, approximately a year from now. For the thousands of those who were laid off this week, we want you to know that we at Insider Gaming are thinking of you during this difficult time. That's your Insider Weekly for this week. Let's hope we get some brighter news next week, and until then, Insiders, I'm your host with the most A to the P, Albert Perkins, and we will see you on the inside.